Sometimes it's better to be lucky than be good. And if that doesn't sum up fantasy football, then I don't know what does. And we may need a little bit of luck this year when trying to figure out which rookie running back is going to be the guy to own in redraft leagues. This class was a little underwhelming compared to what we've seen come out in recent years. So there isn't going to be anybody that just leaps off the page. We may have to dig a little bit deeper this season. Who's going to end up being the next Isaiah Pacheco? Maybe James Robinson, even Kareem Hunt. A running back that wasn't drafted with a ton of draft capital. I mean, James Robinson wasn't even drafted, but end up becoming fantasy guys that we can trust in our lineups in 2024. And that's what this video is going to be all about, trying to find out which rookie running backs in 2024 we should be using redraft capital on, because we know that they're going to give us some decent fantasy production. And we're going to be taking a look at some of the lines that have been set over on Underdog Champions to try and figure out if that will affect the rookie running backs and if it can help us figure out which ones may be the most productive. And if you haven't signed up over on Underdog yet, now is the time to do it, because if you sign up using code word headliners, deposit at least $10 in a new account, not only are you going to get a deposit match, you're going to get a special pick, and you're going to get our 2024 fantasy football draft guide for free. So make sure you double check that it's available in your state, and if so, get signed up right now so you can take advantage of this awesome offer. And our draft guide is bigger and better than ever, and you're not going to want to miss out on it. So even if you've already signed up over on Underdog, you can order your draft guide right now. It's already available and ready for you to start diving into. The link is down in the description below, and best yet, we didn't raise the price. But I want to give one away for free in this video. So let's get 669 likes on this video, and if we do that, I'll pick someone in the comment section to give a guide to for free. All right, now it's time to hop into the content, and I'm going to be breaking down the top 15 rookie running backs in terms of their current expert consensus rankings. And something that we love to do around here is assign eggplants. If you get 3 eggplants, it means that your opportunity to contribute right away in 2024 is pretty darn good. And it could go all the way down to 1 eggplant, which basically means unless someone slips you a little blue pill this season, you're probably not going to be rising to the occasion. And first up in the consensus rankings is Trey Benson for the Arizona Cardinals. And we're going to go ahead and start this segment off with 3 emojis. I like his opportunity to contribute right away in fantasy football in 2024. James Conner, who is the #1 running back right now, has missed 24 games over his 7-year career, basically equal to about 3.5 games per season. He's that one coworker that calls off in the middle of your busy season, and even though you know it's going to happen every single year, you're still frustrated when it does. But last season, even with Arizona struggling, they still did pretty darn good on the ground, ranking 13th in rushing attempts, but 5th in rushing yards as a team. And when James Conner inevitably misses a few games, Trey Benson is going to be ready to step up in an offense that wants to stay balanced and still run the football. And even if he doesn't make a big contribution on the ground right away, Trey Benson could find a role in this offense on 3rd downs and in pass catching situations. Last year at Florida State, he averaged over 11 yards per catch. And this is an Arizona offense that doesn't have a ton of established pass-catching weapons. You drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. and you have Trey McBride. But outside of that, you have a lot of what-ifs. Next up is Jonathan Brooks from Carolina. And this situation could end up working out in his favor, but I'm not as excited about the potential for decent volume in 2024 as I am for Trey Benson. So Brooks is only going to get 2 emojis from me. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind on is Brooks' season ended early in 2023 with a torn ACL. And from everything I see, he should be just fine for training camp, but he could be a little on the weaker side, and Carolina may not give him a ton of touches right off the bat, given the guys that they have in front of him. Now, the competition for touches, in my opinion, is more quantity over quality. because you're going to have Miles Sanders and you're going to have Chuba Hubbard as well. Now, neither of these guys did all that good last season. Both of them averaged well under 4 yards per carry. And even though Chuba ended up being the starting running back by the end of the season, they're still paying a decent amount to Miles Sanders. And like I just mentioned with the Jonathan Brooks injury, they probably keep Miles Sanders around a little bit longer just to make sure that they don't have to push Brooks into a role that he's not quite ready for. And you can argue that Carolina is one of the most improved offenses in all of football. And that's not saying a ton because they were awful last season. It could be one of those situations where, hey, if you polish a turd, it's still a turd. And it doesn't matter how many weapons you give Bryce Young and this offense, it's still gonna look and smell like shit. But if the offense can get better, it should help improve the run game because it's going to make defenses respect Bryce Young way more than they did last year. And in turn, the run game will end up getting a little bit stronger, which if Jonathan Brooks is playing consistently, that's great for him. But if it's Chuba and Miles Sanders to begin the year, if both of them start strong and play well, it could keep Brooks off the field a little bit longer. But new head coach Dave Canales was at the helm of the Tampa Bay offense last season in 2023. And we know that he loves to use his running backs in any capacity because Rashaad White had 368 touches last season, which was second most in the NFL, only to Christian McCaffrey. But let's step back and talk about Bryce Young again for just a second. I think we can all agree that this offense is going to run through him. And over on Underdog Fantasy, his current line for passing touchdowns is set at 18.5. But if you take the higher, the multiplier is only 0.95, which means Underdog believes that it is more likely that he is going to throw for over 18.5 passing touchdowns than under. And I know that line is not very high, but if people believe that he's going to take a step forward and throw for more passing touchdowns in 2024, that may lead to a few less rushing touchdowns available to the running backs. But it also means that the people setting the line do believe that Bryce Young is going to be better. So if Bryce Young is better, this offense is better. If this offense is better, it does lead to the opportunity for Jonathan Brooks to see some decent production in 2024. A lot of people, including myself, thought Blake Corum was going to land with the Chargers and his former head coach in college, Jim Harbaugh. But instead, the other LA team ended up grabbing him up, and this may be one of the best fits in the entire NFL draft. Blake Corum and Kyren Williams are extremely alike. And one of the reasons why the Rams ended up drafting Blake Corum is because they felt like it would be a seamless transition to giving Kyren Williams a few less touches, but not needing to change anything in their game plan. And last season, the Rams did a really good job of staying balanced. And when Kyren Williams was healthy, they were running the ball without any issues. In 2023, they ranked 12th in rushing attempts, 11th in rushing yards, and 8th in rushing touchdowns. And Blake Corum fits this scheme perfectly because he does exactly what Kyren Williams does well. They have really good vision. They do a great job of that one-cut jump where they can get past a defender and get upfield with ease, find those holes in the defensive line, and pick up positive yardage. Now, from a fantasy standpoint, I don't love Blake Corum in 2024 because he's not going to take a ton away from Kyren Williams. But one thing that we do need to keep an eye on is that if Kyren Williams were to miss any games, that is where Blake Corum becomes really important in fantasy football. So I'm going to give him 2 eggplants in this scenario because if Williams does miss time, Blake Corum is going to be a flex option at the worst. And for those of you investing in Kyren Williams, I would also invest in Blake Corum as a handcuff later in your draft. Marshon Lloyd in Green Bay is definitely a decent complement to the running backs that they already have on the roster. But he's only going to get 1 eggplant for me in this scenario. I mean, in free agency, they ended up letting go of Aaron Jones because they wanted to get a guy that they felt fit their offense a little bit better with Josh Jacobs. and they shelled out a little bit of money to make that happen, while also re-signing A.J. Dillon to a one-year deal. But if there's going to be a way that Marshon Lloyd makes an impact in 2024 for Green Bay, it's going to have to be in the passing game. But unfortunately, they have not been utilizing the running back in terms of targets as much as we used to see in the past. Aaron Jones last season was 6th on the team in running back targets. Now, he ended up being banged up a little bit and obviously missed some time, but A.J. Dillon wasn't seeing any targets either. And when you take a look at the weapons around them, they don't really need to incorporate the running back all that much if they don't want to. Pass catching options are aplenty on the outside. They've got Dobbs, they've got Reed, they've got Wicks, they've got Watson, they've got Musgrave, they've got Kraft. I'm running out of breath just saying all of those names. So really dumping off to the running back isn't going to be something that you'll see happen a whole lot. So maybe we rule out the fact that Lloyd is going to see a ton of work in the passing game. Where's the other opportunity for him to score fantasy points if Josh Jacobs is the lead back? Well, it would be sniping a few touchdowns. But if we take a look over on Underdog at the current line for Josh Jacobs right now, it's set at 7.5 rushing touchdowns on the season. And in 3 of his 5 years in the league, he's absolutely blown past that, with 2 seasons of 12 and 1 of 9. And one of his other seasons, he also ended up having 7. So he's cleared that mark quite easily. And he's also been right on that mark one other time. Last year, he only had 6, but that was in a pretty pathetic offense, to say the least. And this year is going to be a whole lot better. So taking a look at Marshon Lloyd and where he can make an impact, I just don't see it happening this season unless Josh Jacobs misses significant time. But even if that ends up happening, what are the chances that A.J. Dillon ends up getting a shot over Marshon Lloyd to start? Well, that's a shocker. The Miami Dolphins decided to add another playmaker with athleticism and speed, and you can probably feel my sarcasm seeping through the screen at you right now because that's what Miami does, but they do it pretty darn well. Now in 2024, this isn't the greatest fit for Jaylen Wright. He could have went to a lot of other teams and been a starter right away. In long-term aspects though, this could end up being one of the better fits in the draft from a fantasy perspective. But this season, you have Devon Achane and you have Raheem Mostert coming back, who both had really good years in 2023. But the Dolphins rededicated themselves to the run game last year, and they showed some explosive plays. Because even though they ranked 15th in the league in rushing attempts, they ranked 6th in the NFL in rushing yards. But here's the reason why Jaylen Wright still gets 2 eggplants from me. Yeah, I don't love it because if Achane and Mostert both stay healthy, Wright's not going to see a ton of touches. But hoping for healthiness from both of those guys, you could find some worse bets out there. Because Achane was already an undersized running back coming into the NFL. And then he ended up missing 6 games last season. So we still don't know how he's going to hold up over the course of an entire NFL slate. And Raheem Mostert, even though he hasn't missed very many games since coming to the Miami Dolphins, he will be 32 years old in 2024. And over the course of his NFL career before coming to Miami, he was definitely a player that was not staying on the field nearly enough. So yeah, Jaylen Wright is going to have a shot, but if you want it to happen, unfortunately, you're going to have to hope for injuries. And I never like to do that. So maybe Jaylen Wright isn't a guy that comes out and produces for us right away, but he could end up becoming one of the top waiver wire pickups in the entire fantasy season. The Buffalo Bills knew that they needed a backup for James Cook, but they didn't really bring in anybody that's going to push him for touches right away, drafting Ray Davis this season. And honestly, this only gets 1 eggplant from me because James Cook is still going to be the main running back. There will potentially be a path to touches though in the passing game. Because last season, James Cook had 6 drops, which was second most among all running backs. And unfortunately, James Cook was a little too inconsistent for our liking as well, as he really only had 9 solid performances last season. 5 as a running back 1, and 4 as a running back 2. But then he left a lot to be desired after that, with 5 games as a running back 3 and 3 games outside of the top 36 running backs. But the Bills seem committed to running the football, and that may happen even more in 2024 with a lot of changes at the wide receiver position. The Bills ranked 5th in rushing attempts last year and 7th in rushing yards. So a lot of Ray Davis really depends on James Cook. And I feel like James Cook will end up being just fine on the ground. And Ray Davis may get a few targets here or there, but I don't know if he gets enough where even in PPR leagues, we decide that he should be worth stashing on our bench. I've already mentally prepared this offseason for the Rashaad White truthers because unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to like your boy as much as you guys do heading into 2024. And Bucky Irving in Tampa Bay is going to get 2 eggplants from me. Last season, Rashaad White had the 2nd most touches of any running back in the NFL. And that's great because in that scenario, volume led to fantasy points and he ended up being one of the breakout players of the year after week 7. But if you look at his stats on the ground, he was not that good. He was one of the most inefficient running backs in all the NFL. And there's a lot better stats to look at than yards per average, but that's one that most people are very familiar with. And his 3.64 yards per average last season ranked 46th among running backs. And this wasn't a scenario where you could look at it and say, well, that offense wasn't all that good. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they were pretty darn good last season. And one of the areas where Rashaad White made up for those inefficiencies on the ground was getting touches through the air. But if Bucky Irving is going to be in that backfield this year and they believe that he is a pass-catching weapon, there is a great opportunity for him to start stealing some of those pass-catching opportunities away from Rashaad White. And over the course of his career, Baker Mayfield has averaged 95 targets to his running backs in the full seasons in which he has played. But this segment isn't about Rashaad White. It's about Bucky Irving. And some of the best things that he does in the game of football is going to translate well into the passing game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So say what you will about Rashaad White. The question is going to be, will there be enough passing game opportunity for Bucky Irving to potentially become a flex option during the NFL season? And if you take a look over on Underdog, the line right now for Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is a little on the lower side for passing yards. Because right now, the Baker Mayfield passing line is set at 3,650.5 passing yards. And last season, he threw for over 4,000. The offensive line could end up being a little bit better. You've got the same weapons back. You've got, for the most part, the same offense, even though Dave Canales is gone and in Carolina now. You could still see him going well over 3,600 passing yards. And if that happens, then Bucky Irving absolutely will be seeing a few of those yards come his way. Audri Estim was not one of my favorite running backs in this draft, and his landing spot didn't do him any favors going to the Denver Broncos. And because of that, he's only going to get 1 emoji from me. The depth chart above him is just too good right now. Javonte Williams, hopefully another year removed from that injury, will be a whole lot stronger and get back to being what we saw from his rookie season. Samaje Perine was signed by Sean Payton and this front office. This is a guy that they liked last season and they used him quite a bit. And then you have Jaleel McLaughlin, who also got quite a bit of touches and saw time in the passing game last season as well. So where does Estim fit in all of this? Estim is more of a bruising running back, a guy that you're going to use on 3rd down, short yardage situations, maybe at the goal line, but he's not really going to be a guy that's going to be utilized in the passing game, which is where I would want him to be able to help out at. I mean, this is a tough division, and Denver could find themselves playing from behind quite a bit this year. And if that happens, all 3 running backs ahead of him are much better suited for the passing game than what he is. He's just not nearly as athletic as some of the other guys on this offense. He had some good numbers while he was at Notre Dame, Unfortunately, those were propped up maybe a little bit too often by just the pure amount of volume he received. But his time in Denver really could be about him just being on the bench and seeing a few touches every once in a while. He's got a really long hill to climb, especially in 2024. Braylon Allen going to the New York Jets is only going to get one eggplant from me in 2024. And the main #1 reason why is Breece Hall. That dude is not coming off the field all that often. But not only that, the New York Jets decided to draft Isaiah Davis as well, who is a very similar running back to what you see with Braylon Allen. And Allen is more of a short yardage and goal line back. When you take a look at the things that he is good at, he's not going to pull Breece Hall off the field on third down. He's not going to be a huge upgrade blocking over what Breece Hall would be either, and Breece Hall is going to see a lot of the touches. Maybe Braylon Allen comes in every once in a while, but Isaiah Davis could even steal that work away from him. So Allen's path to touches in 2024 is really non-existent in my opinion, because really some of the options even after Breece Hall could still end up outperforming him. Will Shipley in Philadelphia from a pure football standpoint is actually a really good fit. From a fantasy perspective, though, it only gets one eggplant from me because I just don't see him making any type of an impact in 2024. Will Shipley is really not a big enough running back to carry a full workload. When you look at Will Shipley, this is a guy that will maybe get a few touches here and there on the ground, but primarily would be used maybe in special teams and as a pass catching back. And in front of him, you still have newly signed Saquon Barkley, which unless he's injured, he's not coming off the field all that often, and a coaching staff favorite in Kenneth Gainwell, who always seems to get touches regardless of who the running back is. And while I mentioned that Shipley could help in the passing game, how often is he actually going to see a decent amount of targets? Because you have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, Paris Campbell's going to be playing in the slot this year, and you have Dallas Goedert at tight end. And Saquon Barkley probably going to see some passing work as well, even if it's not as much as we're used to with him. And take a look over at Underdog for the lines currently set for Jalen Hurts at 11 rushing touchdowns and Saquon Barkley at 7.5 touchdowns. Both of those numbers are lower than their career averages in any given season. So because of that, you have to look at the fact that if both of those guys end up going over those numbers this season, that's not going to leave touchdown opportunities for Will Shipley. And if he's not getting enough pass catching opportunities, he's really going to be non-existent as a whole. One of my favorite sleepers in all of fantasy football this year is Kamani Vidal out of Troy, who was drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers. And if you've watched our offseason videos, you know Vidal came up a couple of different times. And I told everybody to keep him on your radar and see where he was drafted. Vidal's going to get 3 eggplants from me for where he landed with the Chargers. The only running back currently still on the roster returning from last season is Isaiah Spiller. And yeah, they signed J.K. Dobbins to a contract, but the only thing longer than his injury history is Jake's receding hairline. And Gus Edwards, even though he's been highly efficient at times when he was in Baltimore, he wasn't that way last season, so maybe he's losing a step as well. And if there's one thing I know about Jim Harbaugh, watching him at Michigan for the last several years, he gives the ball to the guys that do their job and do it the right way. There are no politics when it comes to Jim Harbaugh. If he looks at Kamani Vidal and that guy is earning his keep, he is going to see time on the field this year. And if he plays well, he may not come off. Another favorite sleeper of mine is Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue, who was drafted by the New York Giants. And his versatility brings me to 2 eggplants for this season. Devin Singletary may end up only being the real competition for touches this year. And there's a lot of people that look at what Devin Singletary did last season with Houston and say, hey, this is going to be a guy that's probably going to have a stranglehold on the starting job. But when you dig deeper into what Devin Singletary did last season, you see that it was primarily based on volume. From an efficiency standpoint, he actually had one of his worst efficiency seasons of his career. So career high in volume led to a career low in efficiency, and that was with a better offense, with better weapons, and a better quarterback. And Tracy's versatility is something that could be hard to take off the field with the lack of potential weapons in this offense. He's a guy that played wide receiver and running back in college, so he knows both positions. He runs a great route tree, and he also works well in the passing game, or he wouldn't have played wide receiver. Tyrone Tracy absolutely could push Devin Singletary and make Eric Gray a thing of the past. Isaac Guerendo was definitely one of my draft sleepers, a guy that if you landed in the right position could end up giving you some great value. But San Francisco in the short term is not the best position to land in, so he's only going to get one eggplant from me because, well, CMC, he's just not going to be coming off the field all that often. And you have to keep in mind that Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason are both back and probably ahead of Guerendo on the depth chart as well. So if Guerendo's going to see any significant time on the field in 2024, unfortunately, he would probably have to see 3 significant injuries ahead of him. Dylan Labe in Las Vegas is going to get 2 eggplants from me, and he's another versatile weapon that could end up making his way onto the field due to a lack of options around him. He was a running back, a wide receiver, and a special teams guy in college, returning quite a few punts and kickoffs for touchdowns. And when you take a look at the running backs ahead of him, Zamir White is still unestablished in my opinion. Because yeah, he finished 2023 strong, but he really doesn't have a whole lot to show for his career so far outside of those 4 games. And Alexander Madison is coming off one of his worst career years with the Vikings last season when he was given a shot to be the starter. So there is an opportunity for Labe to find himself on the field this season and potentially end up contributing as well. But more than likely, he would be a waiver pickup later in the year. Last up is Rashaad Alli for Baltimore, who's only going to get 1 eggplant from me. I just don't see any options for him to find his way onto the field this year. You've got Derrick Henry there, who, I mean, he's going to be the dude, let's face it. Keaton Mitchell, when he ends up coming back, will probably see some touches and be the number 2. And Justice Hill is a guy that no matter how poorly he plays, or even plays at all, he still finds his way onto the field, even if it's for quite a few snaps. But Headliner Nation, in the comments down below, is there a running back that I didn't talk about that you think could find his way into fantasy lineups by the end of the season? Let me know in the comments, because don't forget, if this video gets 669 likes, I'm picking somebody to get a draft guide for free. But for now, Headliner Nation, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet and you like the content. Also, make sure you hit the like button on the video for me and turn on those bell notifications so anytime we drop new content or go live, you'll know about it right away. And YouTube is probably recommending a past video to you right now. If you missed that one, make sure you click on it and get all caught up on the fantasy action. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same.